Wicked.
Well, let's kick things off then, because I think we're about on time. There we go. There's the intro, and what better intro to have to be joined by a rock star himself. So that for those of you who don't know was the magical Oasis playing live, and I'm joined today by the Six rock star himself. Thank you all, everybody, for joining. It's brilliant to be running another session. A couple of weeks ago we ran one with Adrian Swinsko, and now of course we're joined by the one and only James Dodkins. As a means of a quick intro then, so this is the Spotlight series that we're running at Freshworks together with the experts in CX. And the aim here is to really dig into some of the more juicy topics, shall we say, mainly focused around customer. And today, specifically, we're focusing on empathy with customers, basically. My name's Simon Johnson. I'm the GM for Freshworks based here in the UK. And I'm very, very pleased, as I mentioned, to be joined today by James Dodkins. James, please do introduce yourself.
So, hello everyone. My name's James Dodkins. I used to be an actual real-life, legitimate, award-winning rock star, but now
Yes.
I'm not. Now I'm a customer experience rock star, and the reason for that is I help companies deliver rock star customer experiences. I've got a musical keynote, or at least I used to. Simon, do you remember back in the day? Now this might be aging you a little bit here, so I don't want to. Do you remember when events used to exist? I used to go to those and do keynotes, and I used to play guitar in them and talk about customer experience through the lens of music. Hopefully those events will happen again one day soon. But yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I really, really hope so too. And we caught up last week actually, and you were talking about some of the things you've been doing since lockdown in terms of how you've been sort of working. Any insights there as to what you've been doing?
Just trying to take as much as I can online. Like I've got a training course which is now all online on demand. I've been delivering lots of virtual sessions, lots of virtual keynotes, lots of webinars, just trying to find different and fun ways to talk about customer experience and make it as engaging as possible in this new virtual world.
Perfect. Good. Brilliant. So next thing to introduce then is of course the Spotlight quiz, which is actually hottening up. So you'll see here we have the leaderboard so far. Right. You can see Adrian Swinsko came in with a whopping 4, setting the benchmark, but we don't actually know if it's a good benchmark or not. So we'll find out afterwards and let Adrian know. So we'll spend just a couple of minutes at the end spinning through the quiz questions. But let's just kick things off then. So firstly, I'm starving. So James, what are you doing for lunch today?
Right, are you ready for this? So I told the guys we're talking about this. This is going to be an interesting one. There, that's what I'm having for lunch. Can you see?
Oh, I can see it. Yeah.
It's nothing. I tend not to eat lunch or breakfast. I only tend to eat one time a day. I'm like a snake.
What is that, like a particular dietary thing, or?
So technically it is, but that wasn't the reason I did it. It's I started doing it by accident because when I was on the road, I'd rather have an extra 20 minutes in bed than go and eat breakfast. And then just like, especially when you're running big events, if you go and have, if you're running a training course all day or you're on stage, you sometimes just want a bit of time to yourself.
Yeah.
So usually I'd be like, I'll forget lunch. And then I'd eat one time a day. And what I'd find is that if I didn't do that, I'd be less sharp. I'd be less with it. I'd be more sluggish. And so that was just the way I used to eat. And then it turns out there is actually something called intermittent fasting.
There is. That's a big thing now.
Yeah, it's a thing. And lots of people do it. And apparently it's actually pretty good for you to do that. Because like evolutionarily, as cave peoples, we wouldn't have eaten 3 meals a day. We would have eaten once a day, if that, maybe once a week if we were lucky. So supposedly that's an okay thing to do. So my lunch is nothing. What's your lunch? What are you having?
I'm not going to sort of jump to any conclusions here, but actually intermittent fasting is very good for middle-aged men. So I'm just saying it's good for me. I don't know if it's so good for you, but we'll find out. So I'm having a sweet potato coconut dal. And actually, what I would say is since lockdown, we've very much been going with HelloFresh, if I'm allowed to mention that word. Really simple, really easy, great meals, 3 or 4 a week, and then you get leftovers the day after. So this is the leftovers from last night's sweet potato coconut dal. There we go. Nice. Fascinating stuff. So let's just crack on then. So I think like the first thing I'm keen to understand. Like we've spoken a little bit about traversing from a rock star to a CX expert. So what are the similarities and parallels that you found? What have made you able to make that transition into something completely different?
Well, I mean, the transition happened by accident. Really, it was never the plan. After so after my music career, I did the next logical thing that you would do after being an international rock god, and I joined an insurance company. So I did that, gravitated towards customer experience. And I think it was just because I didn't have any insurance background. I just thought like a customer. Came out of there, went into consulting and training. The thing is, I created this corporate persona for myself. So I never used to tell anybody that I played in a band when I was in the corporate world, because I did tell one person, and so she was like, so you used to play guitar in a band and you used to play heavy metal music. What is heavy metal music? And I was like, well, okay, so I'm from Birmingham. And I was like, okay, it's like Black Sabbath, because they're from Birmingham. And she was like, so you used to make money being a devil worshipper? And I was like, no. I didn't make any money from it. And she didn't really find that very funny. So after that, I didn't tell people about it anymore. But I'd created this corporate persona for myself, and I was super miserable because I was spending so much of my time trying not to be myself. And it sort of dawned on me. There's various things that happened that made me come to the realization that I could do this. But I realized I had this really cool music career that I never told anyone about. I've got this organic love that's grown for customer experience. Why can't I talk to people about customer experience through the lens of music? And it dawned on me all at once that there are so many parallels between putting on a show for your fans, writing and recording music, and building experiences for customers. And the way I think about it is customer experience isn't about experience. Music isn't about music. It's all about relationships at the end of the day. Artists don't write music for people to listen to music. Artists write music to make people feel something. And that feeling, the amalgamation of those feelings, the memories of those feelings, the memories associated with that music forms that relationship with the artist. It's exactly the same in customer experience. Experiences are made up of moments. That's all they are. Experiences are just collections of moments. And those experiences cause emotions. And the way that we store those emotions is with memories. And a relationship, all a relationship is just a collection of memories. So it's the exact same thing as far as I'm concerned.
So here's the big question then. We've gone into this lockdown. By the way, that's fascinating insights. And I totally agree. It's all about emotion, actually. We've got into this lockdown and everything's changed, right? Companies have got to transition the way that they think about things, the way that they operate, the way that they interact and, work with their customers. So how do they bring that emotion, and how do they, because it's ultimately, it sounds like what you're saying is it's the emotion that differentiates the companies these days. If you can give positive emotion or you're making your customers and client base feel emotion positively, then you've got more of a chance of, winning that customer. So how have you seen some companies do that? And, what are you sort of training and recommending?
There's lots of questions in there. One of the things, and so the way I used to think about customer experience is that there was two types of companies that give transactional experience and companies that give emotional experience. So dependent on the type of company you are, you would either have a transactional relationship with the customer or an emotional relationship with the customer. And I thought it was black and white. Like a utilities company, for example, your water company. I used to think you don't need to have, an emotional relationship with your water company. But as I sort of digged into it a little bit more, I started to realize that, okay, most of the interactions you're going to have with a water company are going to be transactional. They should be treated that way. Emotion does not need to be involved at all. However, that moment when your water cuts out, all of a sudden, that experience becomes an extremely emotional one. Same with your electricity. The moment your electricity cuts out, you get a power cut. You could have had hundreds of transactional moments with that company, and then all of a sudden you've got a hyper emotional one. And so it really flipped my thinking just all down to like, we as humans, this world is made up of atoms. Relationships with companies are made up of moments. And it's really shifted my focus to realize that it is all about these moments. And you could be a company that does 1 million transactional moments, but then there's always going to be that one emotional moment where you really need to get it right.
Yeah, I also think it's key as well. Like we talk about these very transactional interactions. Now, it's very hard to differentiate if every company is just, delivering these transactional interactions. So the big question is now, how do you build emotion into these, perhaps what were previously seen as just simple yes/no transactions, or whatever it may be?
I don't think you need to. Yeah. Honestly, I don't think that you have to. And I think that's maybe an issue that a lot of companies are having. When I get my water bill, I don't need to have an emotional connection to my water bill. I need it to be fast. I need it to be clear. I need it to be accurate. Mm-hmm. That's it. Now, when my water doesn't work anymore and I need to get in touch, that's when you need to build into it. But it's like when I go to McDonald's and I order a Big Mac, I don't need an emotional experience with the person that is giving me the Big Mac. I need it to be correct order and hot and mildly edible. Tasty. Yeah, that's all that needs to happen. And I think we're all being given advice right now. Like you need to inject emotion into every interaction. That, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't mean I'm right. It's just the way I look at it. I don't think that's good advice.
So what advice would we give them for not necessarily just aspiring business leaders, but business leaders who are perhaps managing their way out of lockdown, right? So they're coming out of it. It's table stakes. You have to have a system that can interact properly with your client and customer base. So what are the kind of top 3 or 5 things in your head that business leaders should be focusing on around customer experience?
So the lockdown, the COVID thing, it's an interesting one because, of course, I keep getting asked, well, what should companies do differently in terms of customer experience? And my boilerplate answer is, if you were doing customer experience right in the first place, you shouldn't really have to change very much, because customer experience isn't about the things that you do. It's about the way that you think. It's about your mindset. It's about your philosophy, the way that you approach interactions with customers. And it's all about understanding who your customers are, understanding their expectations and their needs, and then delivering the experiences that deliver those things. That's what customer experience is about. And if you were doing that in the first place, yes, the expectations are going to be changing and evolving very rapidly. Yes, the needs are going to be changing and evolving very rapidly. But that doesn't change how you approach customer experience. It then does change the stuff that you do. But the stuff that you do, in my head, isn't the customer experience. The stuff that you do is the result of your mindset towards the customer experience. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, we're going on the premise here that actually the business leaders know how to work with their customers. But I think from my experience, what I'm seeing is actually perhaps they don't already know that. And I think your point is they need to figure that out. And the reason I say that is because actually I've had some dreadful experience during lockdown, as I'm sure so many people have. And actually still, I'll call a customer service line and I'm greeted with, sorry, due to COVID, we have, limited access to our, phones. And that just kind of baffles me really. And that they haven't managed to sort things out. But I agree with you on the premise that the business leader understands the problem. But if they don't understand the problem, then that's when there's a big disconnect.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot of research I'm doing at the moment really is, what I'm starting to understand from it is that lockdown has changed customers. So whereas I'm saying like if a company was doing customer experience properly in the first place, this will just flow into their system of improving customer experience. But all of us need to understand that this isn't anything new. I don't think it's going to shock anyone, but customers have changed, their needs have changed, their expectations have changed, and there's an interesting understanding of how we form relationships with other people and other companies and other entities, whether it be a music artist, whether it be a company. And evolutionarily, the way that we form relationships is from physical proximity, how close we can get to them. And the internet changed all of that, because it sort of circumvented that. It meant that we could feel close to people without actually being physically close to them. And it meant that we could form relationships with people or music artists or companies or whatever without actually having to be in the same room as them. So that's really cool. The whole lockdown thing has had given a hyper depletion of that human interaction and given us a hyper reliance on the virtual world. And what it's done is it's hyper intensified people's passions, and it's hyper magnified people's emotions. And we see this not just with companies, but people's passion towards politics, towards music, towards TV, towards film, towards any of their hobbies. Everything is magnified, everything is intensified. And what that means for companies is that if you screw up in the most vital time in living history, that is going to be hyper magnified. A customer's reaction is going to be, much more than it would have been. Shit, did you see my chair then?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
I hope somebody censored that word then. I was right in the middle of a good flow then as well. Jeez. Anyway, but
go on.
Let me finish my thought, because the other side of it is the thing that I think we can really capitalize on. So if you do badly, everything's going to be hyper intensified. But if you do well, it's going to be really hyper intensified too. And it's creating what I'm referring to as hyperfans. So in companies, we talk about, we want to turn our customers into fans. When companies are getting things right, because those emotions and the value that they're creating has just got a multiplier on it, it's creating these hyperfans, customers that will really love a company for life just because of what they've done in this last year.
Yeah, and that's the point I was going to make, actually. In relation to loyalty, and this is very apparent in the music scene. I actually watched a very interesting documentary about Coldplay the other day. Love them or hate them, but they've been through this big cycle of the whole world loving them, and then suddenly most of the world actually not liking their music anymore. And this kind of cycle. But what have you learned, and what can you bring from the kind of music industry and your experience to give advice for how to make companies more loyal or customers more loyal? And I'll just give another example. Because we don't have the bricks and mortar experience, take Selfridges, for example, you don't have that walking through the door and seeing, smelling the aftershave and what have you. Differentiation is barely, it's shrunk, basically. So how can companies get the loyalty that you're talking about to keep them coming back, these hyper fans?
Well, it depends. It depends on the customers you've got. It depends on the industry you're in. The nice thing about customer experience is that it doesn't really matter where in the world you are. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. Customers only speak one language, and that is experience. But you need to understand your customers to understand the experiences that need to be delivered. And those experiences are going to be different in different places. And for me, it's about getting close to your customers, so close that you know them better than they know themselves, understanding them at a psychographic level, not just at a demographic level, but really trying to understand their values, their behaviors, their lifestyles, their influences, and work to not understand what it is that they want, but what it is that they really need. Because the thing is, I can tell you what every customer ever wants. They want more of what you do, and they want it cheaper, and they want it faster. That's pretty much what people want. But being able to understand what a customer really needs, many times when they don't know it for themselves, that's the differentiator. And for some customers, that might be, an in-person experience. For other people, that might be an online experience. For other people, that might be a hybrid. For other people, it depends. It really depends. There is no one blanket answer, and that's the mindset that I don't want companies to fall into, because as I said earlier, the customer experience isn't about the things that you do. You can't just look at another company that does customer experience well and copy the stuff that they do. But you can look at a company that does well in customer experience and copy the way that they think, copy the mindset that caused them to create those experiences in the first place.
And that always makes me think about the old Amazon adage, which was basically the best service is no service. And their whole premise around service was built around, can we proactively, predict what the inquiries are going to be? And when they come in, can we give the agent, the context, the information they need at the right time, to deliver that message? So just before we change tack a little bit, what are your thoughts then around automation and how companies are approaching this very, very tricky subject? Because it almost goes against the emotional conversation that we're talking about. It's almost, the polar opposite of that.
Well, it depends. Like all those transactional things, you can probably automate, because there isn't an emotional connection to them. The problem is it's when companies go in with an automation first mindset. For me, that comes last. For me, it's, again, as I've mentioned repeatedly, it's you start with the customer, understand who they are, understand their needs and their expectations, then design the experiences that will deliver those, and then go, okay, what technology do we need to make that happen? If you automate a crap experience, you just get fast crap. And that's not great. If you've got a great experience that's got certain parts in it that don't need that human interaction, don't need that emotional element, automate it all day, do it as quick as you can. But if you do have an experience that heavily relies on that emotional element, and then you go and try and automate it, I just don't think it's I just don't see how that doesn't mean I'm right, but I personally can't see how that's going to end up in anything but a more negative experience.
I'm actually running a project with actually one of the largest, I won't mention the name, but one of the largest high street brands in the UK, and they've taken an interesting approach to it. We sort of started the project, and it was very much kind of like, let's see if we can automate this, automate that. But actually, we needed to take a step back, like you say. We had to take a step back and look, what does this look like over the next 3 years? What are we really trying to achieve? And then, across the business, what does this mean? Because it's not just a single process that needs to be automated. And then the final piece is, well, we can't build automation until we've got our knowledge management absolutely nailed down, because we need the right knowledge base articles, we need the right FAQs to be able to automate any of these answers. I think that's often kind of overlooked, really. So just final question then. What are your best experiences, would you say, working with companies, let's say retail or whatever it may be, over the past 12 months? What have you taken from it that you can give to us?
What, as in, like, what's the best experience I've had?
Exactly. Yeah.
This is a lame answer, but Amazon.
Yeah.
They haven't missed a beat. And whereas every other company is flapped to try and keep up with it, they were already doing what they needed to do. And I feel lame giving that answer. And I really want to give some obscure company that nobody's ever heard of. But it's kind of one of those things. It's like, I get asked a lot, like, oh, are there any companies I've never heard of that are like small companies that do really good customer experience that you can tell us about? And no, not really, because when you get really good at customer experience, you tend to become a company that everybody's heard of. So that's the best example I've got. And I think
Amazon definitely nailed it. I continue to nail it. I've got a couple of good ones, actually. I really like the way that organizations thought about solving this customer first problem. So, for example, you take Selfridges, or you take like a makeup artist or something like that. How do those guys replicate something remotely through Zoom or whatever it is, what they were doing in store? And that's such a tough thing to do, and that's very different to obviously the experience of Amazon, because it's all like, it's a digital native first. And there were some great examples, like Mac makeup, for example, had specific studios built to allow you to, see the different colorings on for makeup and everything else, which is a pretty cool thing to do. Brilliant. All right. So I think we're probably about ready for a little bit of quiz time. If you're
scared, nervous,
ready. No,
so I've got to beat 4.
Four is the benchmark, basically. So we'll do our very best to speed through. And there's no kind of number of questions. We'll give it about 60 seconds, maybe, something in that region. And just before I start,
I need to get in the zone. Okay.
Can you hear that?
Suspense music.
Okay, question number 1. Are we ready?
No, wait, hang on.
Ready now.
Okay, ready.
Okay, what does CSAT stand for?
Customer satisfaction.
Which US company is facing angry protest for giving free donuts if you show your vaccination card?
Krispy Kreme.
Krispy Kreme. Very good. Question number 3. Nike is suing an art collective in New York for injecting what into 666 pairs of trainers?
Blood.
Yes. Injecting blood as part of a video promo for Lil Nas X, apparently.
Yeah, that's the one.
Question number 4. This unique American contactless pick up and walk out grocery chain opened its first store in London. Huh?
Amazon Go.
Close. Amazon Fresh.
Drat. I think it used to be called Amazon Go. Do I get half a point?
We'll have to refer. We'll defer to Callum for that one, I think. Don't want to be too controversial. I'll have Adrian on the phone.
All right.
Question number 5. Recently, a celebrity took to Twitter to say that he found what in his Cinnamon Toast Crunch cereal box?
No idea. Pass. Next question.
SLA stands for Service Level Arrangement. True or false?
False.
What was the name of the vessel which blocked the Suez Canal recently, halting the transport of millions of consumer goods?
I forget.
Was it Evergreen?
Yes.
Or Ever Given?
Evergreen.
Ever Given. Can you name the parent company of Capterra?
No.
Gartner. Question number 9. This company created a customer service for anything hotline during the pandemic. Can you name it?
Zappos.
Wow, amazing. Well done. Final question, number 10. We'll go for 10. Which CX expert wrote the book Punk CX?
I'm going to go just a guess. Was it Adrian Swinscoe?
Correct. It was. Perfect. Good.
How many did I get? That was about 9.5, I think, wasn't it?
I think you got 6.
Which ones did I get wrong?
Maybe 6.5. So we got the vessel blocking the Suez Canal.
Yeah, I got that wrong.
Zappos you got right. Parent company of Capterra.
Yeah.
Gartner. What else did we have? SLA you got right. The shrimp tails. So recently a celebrity took Twitter to say that he found something in his cinnamon toast.
Oh, grim. That's awful.
Shrimp.
Yeah.
Amazon Fresh / Amazon Go. I mean, that's controversial. And then I think you got the rest right. So what was that? 7-ish, 7.5.
Can you not go to an independent adjudicator for the Amazon Go thing? I could swear it used to be called Amazon.
Okay. The independent adjudicator has just come forward. Callum, I think 6. Absolutely no half marks were awarded. He's
Scandal.
Very, very strict.
Scandal.
Anyway, we're at the top of the hour or the bottom of the hour, whichever way you look at it. So I'd just like to say thank you so much for jumping in the hot seat. Really, really appreciate it. And for everybody on the line, there's a very, very interesting document that we've just released about the speed test of your CX solution. Please go and have a look and download. And of course, go and have a look at James Dodkins if you haven't heard of him, and please contact him to have a good conversation about being a rock star and CX, of course. So without further ado, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Take care, James.
Thank you for
See you
having
later.
me.